Hello and welcome to this episode of the Star Wars Universe podcast. We were all set to be nothing but Andor, and Disney has decided to keep us waiting just a little bit longer. But it's okay, friends, because we've got books to talk about, we've got shows to talk about, we're going to have upcoming episodes on Dark Disciple and Padawan, and maybe even some other books. But today, we are continuing our Rebels coverage with Season 3, Episodes 17 and 18 of Star Wars Rebels. All that more after a commercial break that I have no control over, Sarah has no control over, poor Agent Kallus has no control over, but Grand Admiral Thrawn, he just might control everything. Welcome back. I'm Matthew, your host. I use they, them pronouns.
And I'm Sarah. I use she, her pronouns.
Sarah, so good to have you back with us. So what do you think about these episodes? We're kind of having some pretty plot-heavy, moving things along episodes of Rebels right about now.
Yeah, I'm really glad that we're back with Thrawn. We've got like a couple of Thrawn-heavy episodes in it, and it seems like things are really moving along. We're getting closer and closer to the Battle of Yavin, closer and closer to the a New Hope timeline. Yep. And it's like the excitement and the tension is building.
Definitely. Yeah, I think the two episodes are a really nice pairing in that way, and that like one of them is kind of really about the Empire, the other one's all about the rebellion, but both of them, it's definitely building excitement, realizing we're coming out of this period. When Star Wars Rebels first started, it was about the Empire's in total control. A few people are poking at it every now and then on the edges, and it's an irritant, but no one's seriously challenging things. By the end of episode 18, our second episode today, the fleet has arrived, Mon Mothma's given her speech, and you can see we're barreling forward towards Rogue One and A New Hope. Mm-hmm. So let's start with that first episode, episode 17. And I'll read the summary. An Imperial light cruiser over Lothal intercepts a shuttle fleeing the planet. On board are Ezra Bridger and the droids Chopper and AP-5. Ezra tells Agent Kallus that the rebels believe the Empire has intercepted his last transmission as Fulcrum, and they've come to help him defect if his cover is blown. Grand Admiral Thrawn arrives in his Star Destroyer Chimera and informs the officers on board that he has asked Colonel Wolf Yularen of the ISB, formerly of Clone Wars, to locate the rebel spy in their midst. Kallus swipes the code cylinder with that of Lieutenant Lyle and uses List. He swaps his code cylinder with that of Lieutenant List and uses List's credentials to free Ezra and infiltrate Thrawn's office, where the droids erase the planet that they're on from Thrawn's database and transmit clearance codes for Kanan and Rex to rescue them. List, believing Governor Price to be the traitor, stuns her as she tries to stop the rebels from leaving, and he is arrested as the spy. With List believed to be Fulcrum, Kallus decides to remain with the Empire, although in conversation with Yularen, Thrawn reveals that he knows Kallus is the spy and intends to use him to their advantage. Serious dun-dun-dun-dun moment.
Yeah. Oh, Kallus. I love Kallus. He's so smart so much of the time, but not leaving with Ezra and Rex there was just like the biggest dumb move. Like, you gotta go. You gotta know that your cover is blown. Even if you've pinned it on List, like, momentarily. Mm-hmm. Yeah, like, I think, like, Yularen says at the end of this, like, I'm concerned about how smoothly everything has fallen into place. And it's like, absolutely, everything has gone too smoothly. It's too clearly, it's too obviously List. He has to be a red herring, right?
I definitely agree with you. I'm not sure I think it's definitely the wrong move Kallus makes. My sense, though, was that it wasn't just him being stupid, though that's probably a part of it. It's that he is still wrestling. He still can't fully commit to the idea of just joining the rebels outright, in part because he doesn't trust them, in part because I think he's just still wrestling with himself. The episode starts with that great moment of him just kind of looking at himself in the sink, in the mirror, and clearly thinking about things. When Ezra comes to rescue him, you can see him sort of still kind of not quite trusting Ezra, as well as just, I think he really is a person of loyalty and honor in his own weird way. And he knows the Empire's wrong, but he's just not ready to cross that line yet. And it's heartbreaking because it may well get him killed.
Yeah, like, it's very... Upsetting the status quo is always, like, a risk and always uncomfortable, right? And, like, it's his little life here. He feels like he's doing a lot of good as Fulcrum, you know, fighting against the Empire. But, like, yeah, like you said, making that full leap towards being a rebel versus, like, being a rebel spy seems to be an important distinction in Callus's mind. And he says, like, I can do more good here, too. So I think there might be some of that, like, self-flagellation as well. Like, he doesn't want the rebels to risk themselves to rescue him because, you know, he's part of this evil organization and he has to atone for it.
Right.
To his ultimate demise, I think, is what he feels like he needs to do to, like, alleviate his guilt.
Yeah, I mean, I can see him having kind of a sacrificial aspect to it. You know, that he doesn't deserve to be rescued, that he needs to keep doing this. Yeah. I also wonder, and I don't think we've seen any evidence for this, but we also haven't seen any evidence necessarily the other way. We've seen him be very critical of Admiral Thrawn. We've seen him be very critical about what the Empire is doing on Lothal and in these specific areas. I'm not sure if he has yet gone, like, if he has gone to the place of the Empire is bad and wrong and I should never have been a part of it, or if some part of him still believes that the Empire is what will bring peace and order to the galaxy, but that Thrawn is, you know, too aggressive and that, you know, so he's against this, but maybe he's not quite ready to turn his back on the Empire entirely. And some part of him hopes that, like, getting rid of Thrawn will, you know, you talked at the beginning about how Thrawn seemed okay with civilian casualties and all these things that Callus is sort of against.
It's odd that Callus is sort of against civilian casualties, even though he, like, genocided an entire planet. But I get, like, he is very, like, I guess, disgusted at this point with the idea of civilian casualties and seems disillusioned, if not with the Empire, then at least, like, his treatment within the Empire and, like, the Empire's like, his faction that's going on right now. And, like, clearly he joined the Empire for a reason. Right? Like, there, presumably at one point he thought that what the Empire was doing was, like, good. And, I mean, the Empire wants everybody who joins the Empire to think that what they're doing is good, right? I feel like we're evil, blah, is not an excellent campaign strategy.
I mean, I think what they were very good at doing was you know, this is the whole point of the Clone Wars, is that it had been so much chaos and so much horror that here comes the Empire who's going to bring law and order, and they're going to clean up the streets, and they're going to, I use this phrase very intentionally, make the trains run on time.
Sure, yeah.
And in chaotic times, people often want that. And the book Fallen Star gives a really wonderful description of how this can happen. And yeah, I think Callus definitely strikes me as that. He seems like the sort of person he was willing to cross lines that now he's regretting, but he did genuinely believe that, like, the people of Lothal would be better if these rebels stopped causing trouble and the Empire just sort of brought, you know, peace and justice and order and all that kind of stuff. Like, I think he's totally wrong, but I understand why he would think that.
Yeah. Like, and it's, even we were talking a bit when, like, Obi-Wan. I forgot her name, but she was, like, the character who was part of the Empire and said that she joined up because she wanted to bring order. I totally am blanking on her name. I'm sorry. But yeah, right. Like, I feel like a lot of people probably join the Empire because it's like, okay, yeah, it's been chaos. Let's get some order here and let's bring peace to the galaxy, right? Like, we would like peace. And then it has slowly turned into this, like, peace with, like, a big old asterisk of, you know, like, peace at any cost, peace at, like, total submission, peace at, like, annihilation of freedom, which, not great. And I do think, like, Callus is, disillusioned with it, right? Like, he's a rebel spy. He's clearly helping the rebels as Fulcrum, doing his best to help them. But yeah, he just, like, I don't know if he genuinely believes that his plan to, like, voice this blame on List was such a roaring success that, like, Thrawn wouldn't figure it out, or that, like, maybe Yularen trusts him enough that he would back him up against Thrawn or something like that. But yeah,
well, especially because I think, especially because just to further complicate things for Callus, because we haven't really gotten inside his head much, I also think a lot of what he's doing is just his debt of honor to Zeb, because Zeb saving his life, but also what he did to Zeb's people, and that now he is seen. And yeah, I think on some level that Callus probably doesn't quite know where one of these feelings starts and another feeling stops, and maybe that's also part of why he's not quite ready to just throw in with the rebels entirely. Totally,
yeah. Well, I mean, as soon as Ezra comes on board, like, he recognizes the quote-unquote bounty hunter is obviously Ezra, and he's pissed. And then is talking to him, and he's like, "You're so dumb. Why are you here? Like, you came here to warn me that they're on to me? Are you, like, ridiculous? Why would you put yourself at risk like this?" And he seems upset that, like, Ezra would go to this trouble for him. And then when Ezra says, like, "No, I didn't just come to, like, relay a message. We're getting you out of here." Like, Callus is kind of like, "Well, I guess I don't have a choice now. Guess you didn't leave me an option because I have to come." And I don't know. Like, he seems resigned to it, and it seems like kind of like twist my rubber arm. Like, he's clearly not thrilled. But yeah, at the end, he just... I thought it was really strange that he didn't ultimately go with him. And yeah.
I don't know if I'm projecting here, because I do have a lot of feelings about Callus, and maybe this is what I wanted to see. But I definitely felt like both when he realizes that first just that Ezra might have come to protect him, but then literally to save him, that he has a moment of being kind of surprised that someone cares about him that much, and that he's touched, and like in a good way. And he quickly covers that up with, like, how could he be so stupid?
Yeah, very like flabbergasted kind of uptight Callus, yeah.
It's a nice moment. You mentioned Yularen. It's hard to see him here. Yularen was one of the good guys in theory. He was part of the Republic during the Clone Wars, and he was kind of one of our, he was one of our good guys, and it's just hard because, but it makes sense, I'm currently reading this book about the rise and literally the book I'm reading is The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich. It's one of the most famous histories about Nazi Germany, and one of the things I'm really struck by is the military, who were, deeply upset about. Not necessarily the line soldiers, but a lot of the generals, hated the things Hitler was doing, hated what it was doing to, their culture and their country. But they also believed they had sworn an oath to their military, and they had to follow it. And I'm not for a moment justifying it, to be clear. I still think, they should have done far more to be like, no, we can't be part of this. And that's an extreme example, but I do think that it shows that there's a military perspective of, we have to respect the leaders even if we disagree and don't like the leaders. And I don't agree. Like I said, I think that's wrong. I think that can be a war crime. It's not an excuse. But I get that that's where Yularen would be. That if Yularen believed that the Jedi all of a sudden had turned on everyone, and that the Emperor was the only one to save it, and that the Empire could bring peace, I can see Yularen maybe not being thrilled about it, but following orders because that's what he's good at. And it's sad, but it's so real.
Yeah, it's strange because Yularen's not dumb at all, right? He's a very, very smart man. He's the head of the ISB, right? Or at least some higher up in the ISB. And yeah, it seems like he's fully bought in to the Empire's lies, right? Yeah, because he worked really closely with a number of Jedi. He was our opening voice at the beginning of every episode of Clone Wars. So it does feel like, I don't know, seeing your old teachers suddenly decided to take this drastic turn, and you're like, what? But I thought you were cool. And he still seems nice, right? Which I think is the problem. He seems like a nice guy. But here he is working for the Empire, not just kind of towing the party line, going along with it, and not doesn't want to stand up to it in any way, shape, or form, right? Yeah. And I don't know. I think I'm far more forgiving of some random planet buying into the Empire's propaganda than I am for high up military generals who you have all the puzzle pieces. You could put this puzzle together if you really wanted to.
Yeah, especially, if he's ISB, then he's learning all these secrets. and probably he's seeing that the ISB is the ones who are investigating the senators and all this kind of stuff, and he's probably seeing that like the protections people are supposed to have in the Republic are all going away. So yeah, definitely I can sympathize with you, Lauren, and I can see his story. I think is a real one, but yeah, I can't forgive him or excuse him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Totally.
Thrawn, once again, I feel like we're really starting to see the brilliance and the tactician-ness of Thrawn. Like, it's always very difficult when a writer wants to tell you how smart a character is, and there's often a sort of like show, don't tell, but like you have to be really smart to be able to write a character showing that they're really smart.
Sure.
And the first 1 or 2 episodes, I definitely felt like it was a little more telling than showing. But I think now, like here, the way he figures it out, the way he puts the pieces together, there's definitely a little bit of kind of an evil Sherlock Holmes at work that is very effective as a character. I think like one of the best villains we've had so far.
Yeah, and still very believable levels of like putting stuff together. Right? Because like, I think ultimately how he pins this on Callus, like knowing without a shadow of a doubt that it is Callus, right? Like he and Yularen are talking. Yularen's like, that was too conveniently List. Like everything wrapped up with too nice, neat of a little bow. I've got suspicions. And Thrawn is like, absolutely, I have suspicions as well. It's definitely not List. We're putting him away for the show of it, right? Because it's actually Callus. And here's why it's Callus. And he uses the helmet that Ezra had in his bounty hunter disguise, which was painted by Sabine. And he just points out that, like, it's the same color of paint that we see on, like, Sabine's graffiti. It's the same style of art. It's a Lothcat, which is, like, low-key their mascot. So, therefore, Sabine painted this helmet. Therefore, our prisoner was most likely some on Phoenix Squad, probably Ezra Bridger, which Callus would have noticed when they came on board the ship. Therefore, Callus is Fulcrum. And he's, like, pinned this on List, because List is a dummy, basically. Yeah. List is like all too willing to believe Callus and just wants to be important, I think, is List's ultimate downfall.
I think so, yeah. He's very trusting. Oh god, who is it who says you're too trusting? That's like a famous line I feel in Star Wars at some point, but now I can't. Oh, it's General Tarkin to Princess Leia when she says, like, he thinks that she confesses where the rebel bases on Tatooine as a way to save Alderaan. You're too trusting.
Sure.
I don't know why I just made it German, but anyway.
Turkey could be German, that's fair. But yeah, and it's weird that, like, you bring up Leia, because, like, List, the last time we encountered List is when he was being, like, thoroughly talked down to by 14-year-old Leia.
That's who he... Okay,
yeah.
I recognize this voice. Yeah, he's just really one of those people who gets bossed around, and again... Yularen seeing that they're not exactly the party of truth and justice, they both now know that List is innocent, and they're still letting him be in jail just to commit to the bit. And then, of course, Callus has that last line that is just delivered with such like delicious scenery-chewing evil of Agent Fulcrum will prove far more useful to the Empire than Callus ever was.
Yeah, Thrawn says that.
Yeah. And I just love it again. Like, this is... him realizing, like, the quick thing to do, what a lot of the people who are just filled with rage and who aren't, like, planners would just be like, okay, let's go arrest Callus now. And he's like, no, let's let Callus feel safe.
Yeah.
And let's catch Callus. Let's give false information to Callus. Let's follow Callus. And yeah, he's far more effective that way.
Yeah, well, and even, like, Thrawn figures out that Callus has been into his computer and has, like, messed around with his star chart somehow. I don't think... he's pinpointed that it's like Atolian that he's deleted, which is where the rebel chopper base is. I don't think he's figured out that, like, that is the planet that was deleted, therefore that's where it is. But he can tell that, like, he mucked something up. And when he was, like, looking at the star charts in front of Callus, he was like, nope, everything seems good and cool and chill here. Guess they didn't do anything. Cool. So, like, Callus has this idea that they've pulled one over on Thrawn, which is just so, like, you definitely haven't, my dude. You can't pull something over on Thrawn. That's Thrawn's whole deal. Yeah,
Thrawn is so good at playing. I mean, he's basically been playing the long game this entire season.
Oh, yeah. Like maybe the Empire, like, Palpatine is maybe the only one better at playing the long game than Thrawn.
I think it's so true. A couple other small things in the episode that I really liked. First of all, Thrawn uses the code word Rook as the way to kind of shut down the droids that he's fighting with and later come after him. That's a great callback to the original books that Thrawn was in, the Heir to the Empire books, where Rook is the name of his, the race is called the Nogri. I think it's how you pronounced Noghri. But they're this race of sort of like cat-like assassins who are loyal to the Empire, at least at the start of the books, and Rook is the name of the one who's his personal bodyguard. So I love that little bit of a callback. I also love the callback to the Kalakari and like him recognizing their art. And just Ezra is getting better at mind control. Mm-hmm. You know, there's a lot of things have been growing.
Yeah, like this whole plan again comes together very well of like, let's pin this on List. Let's get List to go after the senator and like pin it Governor Price, right? Like Kallus kind of insinuates that Governor Price is clearly the rebel spy, and List is just like, I am on it. I'm going to prove to Thrawn how good and cool I am. And it very conveniently works into place that like Price, right, like she attacks some stormtroopers, which is like such suspicious behavior, except those stormtroopers are obviously like Rex and Kanan in disguise. And they like, right, she just happens to beat them up, and then List sees this, and like Kallus stealing List's code cylinder to be able to use that, and Ezra mind controls the guard to say like, I'm List, please let me in now. And then so the guard's like, List is in there right now when your creepy robot assassin droid is going to come after you, which like that like Thrawn is also just showing off too, right? Like because when List and Kallus come in to meet with Yularen to like be told that, hey, there's a rebel spy on the ship, the first thing they see is Thrawn just like shirtless beating up these robots. And it's like, that's like you knew what time you scheduled this meeting for. Like he's just showing off at that point.
I think that's he's showing off in one of two ways. Either it's the I want you to see how badass I am, or it's the I am so important that I don't have to pay attention to my schedule, and when you arrive, I will deal with you on my own time. You know, yeah. But either way, it's a total flex.
Probably both, you know, a little of both I bet in there. Yeah. Exactly.
All right, anything more on this one, or should we move to the Rebel side of things?
Yeah, just like, again, still in love with Kallus. Kallus is great. Mm-hmm. Take care of yourself, my sweet baby. Yeah.
Every now and then I look at his hair color, which is kind of similar to mine, and because I was just at Gen Con, there's some great cosplay. I want to go to some Star Wars cons. I'm thinking of cosplaying, and I wonder if I can somehow like shave my facial hair to look like his.
I think you need to add like spirit glue some mutton chops on, but yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then if I do it, do I have to like shave everything off because it's just going to look so ridiculous immediately afterwards? But I might commit to the bit that hard, so we'll see.
It's good.
All right, episode 18. Do you want to read this one?
Yeah. Episode 18. The crew of the Ghost waits in a junk field to rendezvous with... Okay. The crew of the Ghost waits in a junk field to rendezvous with and refuel a rebel ship carrying a secret cargo. The Ghost is found by an Imperial infiltrator probe droid, which the crew manages to destroy, but not before it transmits their location to the Empire. The rebel ship arrives, and the quote-unquote cargo is revealed to be Senator Mon Mothma, who is on the run after recently speaking out against the Emperor in the Senate. 2 Imperial cruisers arrive, and Ezra joins Gold Squadron to fight off the TIE fighters and disable one of the cruisers, as Mothma and her crew evacuate to the Ghost. Grand Admiral Thrawn surmises that Hera will attempt to escape the sector via the Archon Nebula, and he sends 2 Star Destroyers and a prototype TIE Defender to intercept them. Hera manages to destroy 2 TIEs by flying close to a star, but the Defender survives and manages to destroy most of Gold Squadron, except for Ezra and Gold Leader. As the Ghost leaves the nebula, it's caught in the tractor beam by Governor Price's Star Destroyer. Ezra and Gold Leader manage to disable the TIE Defender with ion cannons, and then exit the nebula and fire their proton torpedoes into it, triggering an explosion, which causes massive damage to both Star Destroyers. Escaping into hyperspace, the Ghost brings Mothma to Dantooine, where she transmits a message to all Rebel cells, urging the formation of the Rebel Alliance. As the Ghost crew watches in amazement, dozens of capital ships from all around the galaxy drop out of hyperspace in response to the call to rebellion.
So, I've seen this now. This is my 3rd time watching it through. And you'd think that I'd be pretty jaded to most of it. I got chills in that last scene. Like, I just teared up a bit. It was just such a powerful, like, she makes this incredibly powerful call of, like, resistance. She resigns her place of power. She stands up to, she refuses to hide because she feels like she has to be seen. And people respond and come to fight. How did it hit you?
Yeah, I think it's shot really well, too, right? Like, We meet her early-ish in the episode, and she gets to hang out with Hera a bit and talk about how, she's tried so hard fighting the system from within the system, and just realizes that, she can't. She's got to take it down from the outside. Gives this incredibly passionate speech about how, like, please join me in this rebellion. And then we just wait. And there's, like, a moment before any ship shows up, right? Like, a real solid beat. And then there's one ship. And then you can see that everyone's a little bit, like, takes a breath with this one ship, and then more start coming, and then there's just a fleet. And it's really powerful, to see not only how she resonates with people, but just, like, how ready everyone is to form this rebel alliance, right? How sick of the Empire, how over the Empire they are, I guess.
For sure.
And everyone, like, heeds this call to action, which is really nice.
And I feel like it's a sign of how good this episode is, that the physics make absolutely no sense. Like, I don't for a moment understand how these major flares from the nebula affect the Star Destroyers, but not the much smaller Ghost or the Y-Wings. And I also don't understand how this many ships were that close to where they were, that they could disappear, go into hyperspace and appear like 30 seconds to a minute or two later. But I don't care, because everything about the episode is just so much fun. The seeing the Rebel Alliance come together, getting to see more of Mon Mothma as a character. For those of you who may not immediately recognize the name we're talking about, she is the leader of the Rebel Alliance. She's the one who gives the speech towards the end of Return of the Jedi about how the Bothan slaves have died to bring us this information. She's the leader of the rebellion. She's in Rogue One as well. And brief spoiler based on trailers for an upcoming TV show. Silence yourself for 30 seconds if you don't want to know this, but she is going to be in the Andor series. Yeah. Because that's about the like, in some ways, I think Andor might be running parallel to Rebels, which could be really fun. That'll be another story. But yeah, definitely. There was just so much I loved about this episode.
Yeah, it was great. And, like, we didn't have Kanan at all in this episode, which, like, I don't think I noticed until, like, my second time through, right? Like, Ezra makes some sort of throwaway comment about, like, I guess I see why Kanan picked doing supply runs this episode. And, like, he didn't really feature huge in the last episode either, which is kind of, like, I kind of like that we've sort of brought our focus away from the Jedi for a sec and into, like, the Empire and now the Rebellion as a whole, right? And it sort of makes sense that Kanan is kind of on the fringes of that. Like, the Jedi are part of the Rebel Alliance. Right. But they're not the only thing, right? They're not the Rebel Alliance. The Rebel Alliance is mostly just these, like, band of rebel fighters who've all gathered together to decide to, stand up to the Empire. So I'm glad that we've kind of pulled back from that a little bit and are getting to see some of these scenes. And also just, more Hera, which is nice, too. I love Hera.
Yeah, I think it's very true. And I'll also say, with no spoilers about what it's about, but also, we continue to not get much of Ezra and Kanan in the next couple episodes, especially the next one. And yeah, I think it's nice that we're getting that focus. I think it also might be something about, like, towards the end of the season, people are getting some vacation time or something, or like salaries are running out. I don't really know. But whatever it is, it's just phenomenal. Couple other just small... Oh, go ahead.
Oh, and I was just going to say, just like the interactions between Mon Mothma and who I keep wanting to call Mon Mothra, which I might accidentally do. So, like, apologies in advance. But Mon Mothma and Hera just, like, sitting and talking, especially because, like Mon Mothma was the only other... Well, okay, there's Emperor and then Mon Mothma, right? And those are, like, the two other female characters in the original Star Wars trilogy. And, like, they didn't get to talk to each other. So just having her and Hera sit and chat about, like, life and rebellion and, the decisions really they had to make. Yeah, it's just, like, it's cool and chill, and I like it. And, like, low-key wish that Sabine was there, but I get she's off dealing with her own family drama right now. I like that I really love that, like, she and Hera are, like, talking a lot in the cockpit of the Ghost, and so you can see, like, Sabine's chair in the background, which she's decorated with her, like, punk rock houndstooth pattern and, like, the orange and the red. So, like, she's kind of there in this, like, symbolic way. Yeah. It's cool. It's great.
Yeah. It really is. It's just such a nice moment for those characters. It's nice to see, you know, especially because it's Mon Mothma who's the leader, but in that moment, she totally trusts Hera.
Oh, yeah.
There's one great line where she starts talking to Governor Price in the Star Destroyer up above, and Hera looks at her and goes, "What are you doing? What's your plan?" And she says, "Oh, I'm just stalling while you figure out a plan."
Yeah.
Which is such a nice way of her sort of acknowledging, like, I'm the politics, I'll give the speeches, but you're the military, and Hera, you need to do this. And it's just such a great moment for both of them.
Yeah, and it's also it's like so nice having her step out too, because like the first folks we meet are just like random Gold Squadron people who are just like instantly pissed at the Phoenix Squadron for like no good reason. Right, like the Phoenix Squadron is there to refuel them and gets intercepted by this probe droid who's the same model of droid that we saw like show up to the base when Zeb was in charge. And yeah, so it's like that kind of probe droid, not the like jellyfish kind of probe droid. And that's another, okay, I kind of also like this moment where they like shut everything down because it's going to scan them. And I'm like, that's like, why wouldn't it just scan for life signs first? That's a weird order to do things, but it does seem like it does a general like scanning for electric signals first, and then like its subsequent scan is for life signals. Because it does that pass, doesn't see anything, but decides to like stay and investigate. So I think that's like a nice kind of explanation as to why shutting off your ship will somehow like maybe skirt you under these scans. And shutting off Chopper too, tragically, much to Chopper's chagrin. But yeah, I mean, like, they go after it, they try and shoot it down. There's, like, some fun little banter between Ezra and Zeb about, like, you should be shooting that. And Ezra's like, yes, I know, I'm actively trying to do that. And the Gold Squadron is, like, really upset that this probe droid has, like, found them. They're like, well, you should have just stayed undetected like you were ordered to do. And it's like, yeah, no shit. Like, that's what we were actively trying to do. We weren't like, let's go hang out with this probe droid or anything like that. And it's, like, Mon Mothma's attaché who's like, that probe droid was undoubtedly here for us, gang. Like, maybe let's be a little bit more chill. Yeah. And, like, Gold 2, or, like, Gold Leader, maybe, at the end of the episode, like, they fly together, they learn to trust Ezra, especially Gold. Like, the Gold Leader tells Ezra to, like, lead them out of the nebula. And at the end of the episode, they say, like, oh, you can be my wingman anytime. That's not it. That's the line they're referencing, though. You can fly on my squadron anytime or something like that. Just like nice.
Yeah, the Top Gun Val Kilmer lives again in this.
Delightful.
Yeah, I think it's very true. And I especially like it because at the beginning, when you see Gold Squadron being much more uptight, like there's a great moment where they're just shocked and amazed that Chopper backtalks them.
Yes.
And to me, it helps show that, yeah, there is actually like a real military with a real sort of military decorum forming. And the Ghost crew is pretty far outside of that, you know? And it's a kind of nice reminder that. Also, just as a nice callback and continuing the way that this is just sort of paying things off from the whole season, you know, we've known from the beginning that one of the things Thrawn really cared about was this program to develop a new kind of TIE fighter. And that was like way back in some of the first episodes in the factory on Lothal and what they blew up and stuff like that. So seeing now this prototype of the new fighter, it's just another way of reminding, like, yeah, this isn't, there's little things they're sprinkling. They're not hitting you over the head with it, but it's all being paid off. Yeah,
it seems like this episode was full of, like, fun callbacks, too. Like, even within the episode, right? Like, the pilot of the Destroyer was Vald Skerrig, who was the teacher at the Imperial Academy, like, the flight instructor, who had, like, a really great mustache. Tragic we didn't get to see that mustache in this episode.
True.
But there are also just like so many little lines referencing the original trilogy. Right? Like right behind you, Gold Leader, I think is something that Ezra says. There's not it came from behind, but like a couple other lines that are in that sort of like trench scene, which is neat because like that's also where we first see Mon Mothma. So it's like tying everything together just with these like subtle little nods to the fans that are like It's not important if you pick up these lines, but it's fun if you do.
Especially as, what we're seeing with Gold Squadron, like that's the name given to the Y-Wings at the Battle of Yavin. Yawin. I always get that wrong. People can yell at me, whatever.
I think it's a place where Luke... V.
What'd you say?
I think it's a hard V, Yavin.
Yeah, Yavin. The place where Luke blows up the first Death Star. But yeah, I think it'd be really interesting to see how... I just love seeing all the callbacks they're planting there.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah.
Or
right,
stay on target. Stay on target is the line. There we go. Sorry, I'm trying to think of it.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So I think that's about all I had for the episodes. We're keeping this episode a little bit short, in part because we have a kind of a fun, light episode next week, and then one of the biggest episodes of the season, so we really don't have a lot of time for that one. But any other last comments you want to make about either of these episodes?
No, just, I guess, like, AP5 and Chopper in the first episode 17 were delightful as always. And I know we're getting a bit more of them, and I'm very pleased with it. Yeah.
It's a lot of fun because to me it's like R2-D2 and C-3PO bicker, but you always get the sense that they're it's the bickering of like either an old married couple or like longtime siblings, where like, except for briefly at the start of the first movie where they go in different directions, they're always going to come back to each other as much as they bicker. AP5 and Chopper, it's more like, like when you go out to dinner with some friends and like they say they're in a happy couple, but just the way they talk makes you super uncomfortable because you're like, do these people like each other? I don't honestly know. I feel like that's it. Like AP5 and Chopper feel like they know they're supposed to like each other in part because they're the only droids around, but they're not really sure about that yet.
Yeah, well, I don't even think it's like, is that this couple doesn't like each other. It's like you've gone out to dinner and there's two people who are like, don't worry, I'm not gonna bicker with Chopper. We're gonna be fine. We can have dinner and I can keep it together and we'll be cool. And then as soon as like Chopper opens his mouth, AP5 is like, yeah, but I'm a genius, so what are you even talking about, Chopper? And Chopper's
it's more like going out with two exes.
Yes, yeah. Or they just like have some sort of beef against each other and are trying to prove that they're the superior droid or whatever. It's great. I like that it is like this take on the R2-3PO relationship, but it's not just like mimicking it exactly. Yeah.
Definitely. It's very much the mirror universe, kind of the dark side, the darker timeline version of it, which I like.
But I love them both. Like, I love both Chopper and AP5 so much. Just they
get along so well, ways. And to me, you always kind of needed C-3PO to be interpreting R2. And R2 did fine without him, but they were best with each other. I think it's very important that we had 2.5 seasons of Chopper without this.
Yeah.
To really show, because Chopper is, in a way, much more expressive than R2 or really any other astromech droid has been. And so now we're bringing in AP5, and it's great, but I feel like Chopper didn't need him in the way that R2-D2 maybe needed a C-3PO at first.
Yeah, and I think, and we also get Chopper from the get-go having Hera understand him the whole time. Whereas, in the beginning, Luke doesn't know what R2's saying at all. And it's a while before R2 and Luke even hook up, right? Like we get 3PO and R2 by themselves at the beginning of the movie for quite a bit, so it makes sense that they're a pairing. But yeah, totally agree. Like Chopper doesn't need AP5 at all, but it is fun and nice to have him there from an audience perspective. Yeah.
Definitely. And we've seen so much of Zeb and Chopper bickering and Zeb, Chopper, Ezra all bickering. So it's a nice change for sure.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think it's a good place to wrap up. Sarah, as always, thank you so much for being a part of this. To our listeners, would love to know what you think. How do you feel about these episodes? How do you feel about the way this whole season has been building? We're going to keep talking about Rebels as the week getting up towards Andor goes on. We're also, as I said, going to do an episode on Dark Disciple. I'm trying to nail down an episode about Padawan, the book that recently came out that I just put up a TikTok on. That's definitely worth checking out if you've read the book, though it has some spoilers. There's a lot coming up. Let us know what you think. You can find all the ways to give us feedback by going to theethicalpanda.com. There you'll find our Facebook, our Twitter, email us, all the different ways to find us. And most importantly, there you'll find our other podcasts and all the great stuff going on. So I'm myself, Sarah, thank you so much for being our guest. To all of our fans, thank you all so much for listening. And as fans, be good to each other.
Yay.
Kenobi!
That's good. That's I was going to say, I have nothing to add. No.